Hello everyone, today I'll be ranking every single book that I read in this past month from best to worst. And normally in these types of videos I would also talk about the books that I'm currently reading or the books that I want to read this month. But I've just decided that I'm just going to rank the books that I read in the past month from now on with these monthly reading wrap-ups. Because I feel like my videos are just getting a bit too long. All my reading wrap-up videos take a tremendously long time to film and edit, and so I decided to just cut it a little shorter, so I won't be talking about the books I'm currently reading or the books I plan to read. I'll just be ranking the books that I read in this past month. The best book that I read this past month is undoubtedly The First Men in the Moon by H.G. Wells. Now, I have read some of H.G. Wells' other books, and I've really loved them, but this is undoubtedly my favorite of his works so far. It is so good, and I enjoyed it so much. The characters were amazing, the world building is incredible, and there is not a single flaw that I could find in this book. I highly recommend it. It is just amazing and incredible, and H.G. Wells really did an amazing job with it. He is an amazing storyteller, and I would highly recommend it. If you want to hear my full thoughts on it, I did a video review of it, and that's all that I'm going to say for now in this video. And then, the next favorite book that I read this month is And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie. Now, I haven't read much mystery at all. Pretty much the only mystery books I've read is Sherlock Holmes and Flavia de Luce books. And I love both of those. Flavia de Luce is one of my favorite series. Sherlock Holmes is incredible as well. And so I decided why not read Agatha Christie. I've been recommended her books a lot. And she is considered to be the greatest writer of fiction of all time. I mean, her books have sold so many copies. She is the most best-selling author ever besides William Shakespeare and the Bible. It says here on the back that her books are only outsold by the Bible and Shakespeare, which is really impressive. Agatha Christie is literally the best-selling author of all time, besides Shakespeare. And I can definitely see why. And Then There Were None is such a good story, and I loved it so much. Basically, these 10 people just randomly get invited to stay at this island for a few weeks or so, but then all of a sudden, they start getting murdered. These 10 people start dying off slowly, one by one, and it is so interesting to see the process of how you sort of like suspect that one character, like one of the 10 characters is the murderer, but they're getting slowly killed off. And as each person dies, then the suspects really narrow down. And it was just so fascinating to read through all that. This whole story was based on a poem by, what's his name? Let me see, it was in the front here. A poem by Frank Green about 10 little soldier boys. And it was so good. In fact, I read this entire book in just a single Friday evening. And it is like over 250 pages. And I read it all in a single Friday evening because it was just so good. And it's impossible to not get hooked by it. It's just so good. I loved it so much. I'm definitely reading more Agatha Christie because this was just an incredible book. It might even be better than Sherlock Holmes. I don't know if it's better than Flavia de Luce, but I think it might be better than Sherlock Holmes, which is really impressive. This is such a good book, and so fascinating to see the process of how slowly all these characters are murdered, and you sort of like go into each of the characters' minds only briefly. Maybe you can like glean some clues from the thoughts that some of the characters are thinking, and it's just so fascinating. It was so good. I was so certain that I knew who the murderer was until right up to the very end, because Agatha Christie like makes you suspect one character, but then they're killed off, and so you suspect another character, but then they're killed off, and the suspects like slowly narrow down, and then you suspect one character, and I'm not going to spoil anything, but I almost want to talk about it in spoilers, but I'm not going to, because I really think that you should read this book going into it blind, because it is such a good book. I loved it so much. I highly recommend it. I was so certain I knew who the murderer was up until the very end. And the plot twist, the explanation for everything was unbelievable. It just blew my mind at the end. So yeah, an amazing book. My next favorite is this. The Martian Chronicles by Ray Bradbury. Now, Ray Bradbury's most famous book is Fahrenheit 451, and I have read that one. It is one of my favorite books ever, and I just think Ray Bradbury is an amazing writer. You know, Fahrenheit 451 is so incredible, and The Martian Chronicles was so fascinating as well. It's not really like one continuous story. It's sort of like a bunch of little stories that fit into a larger story. Kind of like the Silmarillion, or I think the Bible would be a better example. How the Bible has a lot of individual stories inside it, but they all sort of go together to form one larger story. And that's exactly what this book does. It was so fascinating. All of these stories in this book were just incredible. And Ray Bradbury is an amazing writer of prose. He knows a thing or two about writing prose. His prose is so incredible. Honestly, probably some of the greatest prose I've ever read, besides probably J.R.R. Tolkien's prose. Just the way Ray Bradbury writes is amazing. And I really love this book as well. Not as good as Fahrenheit 451, but still a very, very fascinating read. This takes place in the future when humans start to go to Mars because everyone on Earth is just tired of all the wars on Earth. They're tired of the economy, they're tired of the wars. There's like a nuclear war happening on Earth around this time in the future. And so a bunch of humans are going to Mars trying to escape from Earth and live their new life on Mars just in peace and quiet without it being disrupted at all. So then all the humans start to inhabit Mars, and Mars almost becomes like Earth because like the humans are taking things from Earth to Mars. They're taking trees to Mars, they're taking grass to Mars and everything. So they're basically like making Mars an entire second Earth. And it's so fascinating. This book was so fascinating. I loved it so much. The stories in it were so amazing. This book was kind of wild. Like some of these stories were just kind of crazy and they blew my mind almost. Ray Bradbury is an amazing writer. I definitely want to read more of his books, especially after reading this one, because The Martian Chronicles was amazing, and I highly recommend it. So this book was amazing, although I will say the ending was not the best. It was a very unsatisfactory ending, and the whole story almost feels incomplete after that ending, so I just wish the ending could have been better, but other than that, this is just an incredible book that I would highly recommend. Ray Bradbury had such an inventive mind. You have to be really creative to come up with some of the stuff in here. I don't think I could ever come up with some of the stuff that Ray Bradbury does and executes it so well. The next book that I read is another one by H.G. Wells, and it is The Island of Dr. Moreau. Again, this is another amazing book, although I don't think it's as good as The First Men in the Moon. But still, this is a very enjoyable book, very like quick, easy read as well. It's only 140 something pages. It's like about 150 pages, so not that much. And it's such a fast-paced story that keeps you hooked throughout the entire thing. I also love H.G. Wells' prose and dialogue. The way he writes is really good, and he comes up with a lot of fascinating concepts, and like Ray Bradbury, executes them really, really well. I really enjoyed this one as well. Parts of it kind of reminded me of Frankenstein, which I liked, because Frankenstein is one of my favorite books ever. And parts of this just sort of reminded me of Frankenstein. A very enjoyable book. Definitely not the greatest H.G. Wells book ever, but still a very good book. And the next book, let me see here. I don't actually have a physical copy of this next one because I listened to the audiobook, so let me just pull it up here. Here it is. It is 100 Proofs That the Earth is Not a Globe by William Carpenter. This was such a good book. Such a good book. And the reason I'm saying that is not because I agree with everything in it, but because it was such a hilarious book to read. So, it's so crazy how some people actually believe the earth is flat, because just, it's crazy to me. This was definitely an amazing read. And I know it wasn't, William Carpenter didn't write this book as a joke. He wrote it very seriously. He very seriously, honestly thought that the earth was flat. But it was just so funny to read because some of these proofs are just crazy. Like, there was so much circular reasoning. Like, there's this one proof that was basically saying, the Earth is flat because we know that the Earth is flat and that the sun and moon, like, move above the Earth, and the Earth isn't round, so thus we have an undeniable proof that the Earth is not a globe. And there was also another proof that the Earth was not a globe, and it was one that was saying it's just common sense to think that the Earth is flat, because when you go outside, you can very obviously see that the Earth is flat and not round. Thus, we have an undeniable and inexorable proof that the Earth is not a globe. And he repeats that one sentence at the end of every single proof. He's like, thus we have an inexorable and undeniable proof that the Earth is not a spinning globe. And it was just so hilarious. And there was this other proof where he was saying, like, oh, if the Earth is round and it's, like, constantly moving, then you could, like, fire a bullet into the air, and because the Earth is moving, the bullet would, like, land behind you instead of on top of you. Like, if you fired a bullet straight up, it would land behind you instead of on top of you since the Earth is moving. Like, and yeah, this is just a hilarious and humorous read. It's still kind of hard for me to believe that some people actually think the Earth is flat, but yeah, this is a hilarious read. Probably even more funny than Diary of a Wimpy Kid. And then the next book is one that I've been wanting to read for a while, and it is Oliver Twist by Charles Dickens. I haven't read very much Charles Dickens. I've read part of Great Expectations, and I've read a few of his Christmas stories. I love his Christmas stories. A Christmas Carol is probably the greatest Christmas book that I've ever read in my entire life, alongside maybe Letters from Father Christmas by Tolkien. And I really did enjoy Oliver Twist, although it definitely was not as good as A Christmas Carol. The story just did kind of drag on a bit, and there were some parts of the story where the characters were doing something, and I was just wondering, why are they doing this? Like, I got really confused at parts. Sometimes the plot was a bit hard to follow, but if you, like, really pay attention, it is pretty easy to read this book, even though it's a very long book. It's like 600 pages, and I still did overall enjoy it. It is an amazing story with very good moral themes that I really enjoyed, and the ending was amazing as well. The beginning and the ending were absolutely incredible, and everything in between was pretty good, but not the best. I still loved this book a lot, and I will definitely be reading more Charles Dickens. The last, like, 200 or maybe 150 pages of this book were just incredible, and I loved it so much. I'm giving this one probably 9 out of 10. Oh, goodness, I forgot to rate the rest of the books. Okay. I can't believe that. I actually forgot to rate the rest of the books on this list. So, 100 Proofs the Earth is Not a Globe, that one is probably 9.5 out of 10. Island of Dr. Moreau, same. Martian Chronicles, 9.8 out of 10. And then both First Men in the Moon and Then There Were None, both of these are 10 out of 10. I can't believe I forgot to actually rate these. Okay, and then the next book, I also do not own a physical copy of this because I got it from the library and I had to return it, but I'll just pull it up right here. And it is, here. It is A Crown of Swords by Robert Jordan. This is book 7 in the Wheel of Time. I've been reading my way through the Wheel of Time for a couple months now, and I'm really enjoying this series, although, like, the sixth book was not as good. It was very slow-paced, so much longer than it needed to be, and I think that the seventh book is definitely an improvement over the sixth book, but still not as good as, like, books 1 through 5. Books 1 through 5 of the Wheel of Time were incredible. Book 6 was okay-ish, and this book was pretty good. So, an improvement over book 6, but not as good as books 1 through 5. The beginning was good, and the ending of this book was amazing. The ending was just incredible. Robert Jordan is a very good writer of prose as well, in my opinion, and character in most cases. But, like, in the middle of the book, the story just sort of dragged on, and I remember, like, I still did enjoy it. I enjoyed it, but then after I'd finished it, I was thinking about it, and I realized not much had actually happened in the story. You could summarize this whole book in just, like, a paragraph or two, and, like, this book isn't a short book. It's over 800 pages, but it probably could have been 300 and maybe even 200 pages. But it feels like Robert Jordan just likes to make things as long as he possibly can, because there were some chapters where the characters were just talking about nothing at all that had to do with the plot, and it just dragged on and on and on and on. And there's this one chapter where the characters were saying, okay, so should we go to this city or should we stay in this city? And so they talked about that for like more than 30 pages probably before finally deciding, okay, I guess I'll just move to this city. And that conversation did not need to be 30 pages long. So still, it was an enjoyable book, just not a lot actually happened in it, and it was very slow, especially in the middle, but still it had an amazing ending, and I'm looking forward to reading the rest of the Wheel of Time series. I also don't own the physical copy of the next book because I had to return it to the library, but it is a book from a genre that I don't usually read, ever, and that is the self-help genre. So this is How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. I think this is like one of the most famous self-help books ever written, alongside maybe like Atomic Habits, which I've read most of Atomic Habits, but not all of it. And I don't typically read self-help. I much prefer fiction and sometimes history or astronomy. I really like astronomy. But self-help is a genre that I haven't really read much out of. And reading this book was very interesting because I think there is a lot of good advice in this book, even if you're not looking to win friends and influence people. Like, there are chapters where the author Dale Carnegie is talking about when you're debating with a person, never be too vengeful with them. Never say, oh, you're wrong. And, like, be kind and respectful to a person whose opinions differ from yours, because if all you do is just yell at them and try to enforce your opinions on them, then they aren't going to listen to you if you insult them for their opinions. And debates should be a respectful thing where you respect the other person while talking about differing opinions. And I think that is something that so many people today really need to learn, because in debates all the time, people very much view their opinions as facts. And opinions are just opinions, not facts. Now, that's not the case for all opinions. Some opinions are facts, like the opinion that murder is wrong, or, for example, the opinion that the earth is not flat. But, yeah, I think many people could learn from this book if more people read it. There is a lot of good advice in it, although some of the examples he had in this book were a bit, like, overdramatic. Like, there's this one chapter where he said, where it was all about smiling, like, always smile to everyone. Okay. And then, like, some of his examples were like, Abraham Lincoln became president of the United States, all because he smiled a lot. It was just very over-exaggerated at parts, I believe. And there were some logical fallacies I noticed in it as well. But overall, I think this book has a lot of good advice for it, just for your life in general, even if you're not looking to win friends and influence people. Just not the greatest book, because, like, winning friends and influencing people, when you're talking to a person, it's not about using tactics or hacks to try and get their attention or, win them as your friend. Like, just be honest with people. And I don't think that some of the advice in this book is stuff that you should necessarily follow and just apply it to your everyday life. Like, just be honest with people. Winning friends isn't about tactics or hacks or anything. Just be honest when conversing with the person. But yeah, still, I think this book had a lot of good advice in it, just not the greatest. I'm probably giving it 7 out of 10. And then we get to Eclipse. This is book 3 in the Twilight Saga. Now, I did a review of the first Twilight book, and I didn't like the first Twilight book at all. I thought it was horrible. The second Twilight book, probably an improvement over the first one, but still, not very great at all. And this third book, I think, like, out of the Twilight series, it's probably the best. I think the story was the most well-structured. It had a pretty good ending as well, but still, it is not a good book, hardly at all. Out of the Twilight Saga, it's probably the best in the series. But I still did not like it. It was more enjoyable than the other Twilight books, but still, just not the greatest at all. Not even good. All of the characters are just such terrible people, especially the main character. The main character, Bella, like, she makes the most unwise and unintelligent decisions that it is possible to make. I'm convinced that she could get into the Guinness Book of World Records for the lowest IQ ever. I'll rate this one 4? No, not 4. I'll rate it 3.5 out of 10. And then the worst book that I read this month, and probably the worst book I have ever read in my entire life, is Breaking Dawn, final book in the Twilight Saga. This whole series is just so terrible, and this is the 9th most sold book series of all time. How on earth did that happen? Like, I know that opinions differ, tastes differ, but I don't see how anyone could like these books, because there is like nothing at all to like about these books, especially this last one. I feel like 0 out of 10 is much too high of a rating for it. I was basically like skimming through this book just to get it over with quickly, which isn't something that I want to do with a book, but it was just such a horrible book, and I suffered through it to the very end. All 700 pages of it, I basically skimmed through some of the chapters, even skipping some pages entirely, because it's just so horrible. So the whole synopsis of the Twilight Saga is this girl called Bella falls in love with Edward, someone from her school, but then she finds out that he is a vampire. And of course, she doesn't care that he's a vampire. She wants to marry him anyways. And then she wants to become a vampire so that she can marry him. Now, I wasn't actually expecting her to become a vampire, but she did in this book. Now, if Edward hadn't turned her into a vampire, she would have died, but that would have been so much better than being a vampire. Because being a vampire is so much worse than death. And then I saw like a 5-star review on Goodreads for this book, and the person who wrote it was talking about how Edward like saved Bella's life by turning her into a vampire. Edward did not save her life, he cursed her entire life. Being a vampire is a curse, and the worst curse ever. It would have been better if Bella had just died. And that's not even me, like, being mean to her just because I didn't like her as a character. Like, she's the worst character in the whole series, worst character in a book I've ever read. And I'm not just saying that she should have died because I don't like her. But dying would have been so much better than becoming a vampire. Edward did not save her. He literally cursed her. Also, one more thing. Bella's dad, Charlie, never finds out, at least within this book series, her dad never finds out that she's a vampire or that the Cullens are vampires. He never even finds out that vampires exist. And like, yeah, it was not the most intelligent decision to want to become a vampire just so you can marry Edward. Like, Bella, I'm pretty certain, like, I'm not entirely sure, but I'm pretty certain that your dad, like, maybe, perhaps, might notice something strange is going on when he's, like, an old man and you're still a teenager that's never aged. Like, I'm sure, you know, it might not be, like, that suspicious. You probably won't even notice, but, like, maybe it's just a bit inconspicuous. And then, like, she has a daughter, even though they said in one of the earlier books in the series, I think, that vampires can't have children, but then in this book they have a child, and there's just no explanation for it. They just act like it was never said earlier on in the series that vampires can't have children. And, man, so Bella and Edward have a daughter, a vampire, half human, half vampire daughter. And so Bella's mother's name is Rini, and one of her friends' names is Esme. So Bella intelligently thought to herself, why don't I name my daughter after both my mother and my best friend? So she combined her mother's name and her best friend's name into one name, Renesmee. She named her daughter Renesmee. That is just the most horrible name ever. And then it was so weird reading from the perspective of a vampire. And the ending, this is the worst ending to any book series I've ever read. So in the end, all the good vampires gather together. All the good vampires are going to fight against the Volturi, which are the evil vampires. And so they are preparing for war for like over 150, probably 200 pages. They're preparing for this big battle with the Volturi. They get all these armies together. They're training each other. They're preparing for battle for like 200 pages straight. And then They meet up with the Volturi in the forest. They sort of talk things over for a few pages, and then the Volturi just leave. And that's it. And there's not even a battle. They just leave. They just... It's so horrible. That is the most lazy and rushed ending ever. You spend 200 pages preparing for this big battle that never even happens. And the bad guys just decide, we don't really feel like a battle today. And they just walk off. It's so horrible. And then the one scene where like Bella is about to die, but then Edward turns her into a vampire at the last second. Bella was about to die. And I did not care at all. That's the thing. I don't care for a single one of these characters. If Bella had died, I would not have cared at all. I wouldn't have felt sad at all. Not only that, just the whole plot is just so horribly written. The prose and the dialogue is just terrible. Just everything about this book is bad. I don't see how anyone could like this book series, but a lot of people do. I mean, it's the 9th most sold book series of all time. I have no idea how that happened, because I don't see what there is to like about this whole series. There's nothing in it that's likable, pretty much at all. But, I don't know. Negative 100 out of 10. The worst book I have ever read in my entire life. Although, okay, so I just forgot about something. So in this book, there's a lot of lore. They have a meeting and they talk about the lore of werewolves and vampires and why werewolves and vampires meet each other. And the whole lore behind vampires and werewolves and why they hate each other, that whole thing in this book was just brilliant. It was genius even. The world building is very creative, especially the lore behind the vampires and werewolves. But it is completely ruined by the horribly written prose, the terrible dialogue, the atrocious characters, and the whole just messed up plotline. But yeah, I finished the Twilight Saga, and I did survive, barely. Sorry for ending the video on a bit of a negative note, but just the worst book series I've ever read in my entire life. But anyway, that's it for this video. Those are all the books I read this past month, ranked from best to worst. Thank you for watching this video, and for now, farewell.